atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I admit here tonight, in the presence of you fine people, that I only hired Jim Eagle because he's a half-blind, one-legged, asexual Native American. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the Blast Radius. So glad you could join us this evening. Here is your Decline of Western Civilization news roundup for the work week ending Friday, 17 May 2024. Dateline, Washington, Monday, 13 May. You know, it seems like practically each week we ask ourselves, could things possibly get worse for the California cackler? And each week, right on cue, the universe says, hold my beer. Vice President Kamala Harris is undergoing a brand new image makeover, as you may have heard. And if you're keeping score at home, yes, this is at least the 10th one of those in just the last, 3.5 years? And her people have either all quit or they are so completely out of ideas that the only thing they have managed to come up with for Kamala Image Makeover Spring 2024 edition was, how about if we just have her start swearing in public? And so it was that Kamala Harris, while addressing something called the Asian Pacific American Institute for Congressional Studies Legislative Leadership Summit, sounds like a wild party, doesn't it? In a moment that was supposed to appear organic and spontaneous, but was very obviously scripted and pre-planned, declared the following, and I'm going to read out the entire larger quote so that you can revel in the glory that is Kamala Harris's intellect. Quote, so here's the thing about breaking barriers. Breaking barriers does not mean you start on one side of the barrier and you wind up on the other side. There's breaking involved. And when you break things, you get cut and you may bleed. And it is worth it every time. And here comes the coup de grace. We have to know that sometimes people will open the door for you and leave it open. Sometimes they won't. And then you need to kick that fucking door down. End quote. And then she cackled like a drunken witch for about 15 seconds, as she tends to do. But hold on, Cap, you ruggedly rapacious rapscallion, I hear you say. Kamala Harris said this? You mean the same Kamala Harris who's been the recipient of more unwarranted professional advancement than possibly any human being who has ever lived? The Kamala Harris that future historians will likely point to as a cautionary tale of how totally absurd things can get when you unshackle upward mobility from skills and experience and work ethic and temperament and start allocating political power according to external physical characteristics? Kamala Harris, the childless 50-year-old spinster who married a dude with adult children just so she could pretend to be their mom? Which I'm sure totally isn't offensive to their real mom. That Kamala Harris? That one? She's actually got the temerity and the crippling lack of self-awareness to be giving lectures about breaking barriers and kicking doors down? You're freaking serious right now? Yes, dear viewer. Afraid so. Serious as a heart attack. From Maine to Montana to South Carolina, she's the only VP with a goddamn vagina. From Frisco to Memphis to Old Oxford town, slam a door in her face, she will kick that shit down. I better stop before I turn the whole 90-minute live stream into a freestyle ringside introduction. God damn it, Jim Eagle. You're supposed to shock me with the electric cattle prod when I prattle on too long like that. What the fuck do I pay you for? Dateline Chapel Hill, Tuesday, 14 May. In the first of what's likely to be a fairly incessant barrage of such stories over the course of the next few years or so, the trustees of the University of North Carolina voted this week to end immediately, with extreme prejudice, any and all diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that currently exist at that august institution. According to a report from Fox News, quote, the unanimous decision by the trustees will reallocate $2.3 million that the university spends on DEI programs toward police and public safety measures as part of its annual budget approval process, end quote. So granted, UNC obviously isn't a very big fish in the DEI pond. I mean, 2.3 million is pretty small potatoes in the grand scheme of the race huckster industrial complex. I bet places like Brown and Cal, Berkeley, and Harvard spend 100 times that much on their DEI departments and the bureaucracies they have lovingly shepherded into existence around them and the magnificent gleaming cathedrals they have built to house them in. But the wave has crested, y'all. I know you don't want to hear that. I know people who have spent their whole lives and livelihoods getting wrapped up in this scam, but let's just put it this way. If the life trajectory you were planning for yourself is to get a queer black studies degree and a women of color studies degree with a minor in paraplegic transgender Eskimo studies. And then you're going to spend your whole career in various fabulously well-paid faculty positions in the DEI departments of a series of highly prestigious universities. You may want to learn a skilled trade, just as a backup, is all I'm saying. And you know what the straw was that broke the back of the DEI camel? And I guess it's fitting that this all comes down to a camel analogy. It was when all the normie parents watched the Arab Spring Break on television, because it's easy to be oblivious as a parent sometimes, as your kids are being inculcated with some of the world's worst ideas all the way from kindergarten to elementary school to junior high to high school. Right up until the moment you see your 19-year-old honor student daughter cosplaying on television as a Hamas suicide bomber. After that, it's just never quite as easy to look the other way anymore. After that, your average oblivious normie parent might just be shocked into thinking, I think I'm not entirely sure I'm cool with paying for all this. I think, in fact, I might actually vote for Trump. Dateline Gross-Outville, Wednesday, 15 May. Now, at first glance, you might view it as a step in the right direction when I tell you that this year, Sports Illustrated is going to return to putting an actual female on the cover of the swimsuit edition, rather than a woman-faced minstrel in a lady's swimsuit with his junk tucked back, which has been their habit in recent years. Can't imagine why those sales numbers have crashed so badly, guys. It's a real mystery. But don't get yourself too encouraged, because the other shoe is about to drop when I tell you the female cover model is the 69-year-old CBS morning host Gayle King. Now, first things first. Does she look pretty good for age 69? I guess. Though the cover photo that they have released is so heavily airbrushed, it may have actually crossed the line from photograph to digital painting. But whether she looks good or bad for her age is not the point. The point is that no 69-year-old woman should be doing sexy photo shoots in a swimsuit, because 69-year-old women are not supposed to be sexy. No young man of reproductive age ever looked at any 69-year-old woman in any context and said, yeah, baby, that's what I'm talking about. And you know how I know that? Because I used to be a young man of reproductive age, and when I was one of those, in my adolescent years in particular, the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition was arguably the most important print publication of the entire year. If you were a boy or a young man of a certain age, you acquired yourself a copy of that magazine by any means necessary, every year. And in one of the years in that period, I can't remember if it was 89 or 90 or 91, but somewhere in there, they brought back Cheryl Tiegs to do a photo shoot at the very advanced age of 42. And did she look good for being 42? Of course she did. She looked freaking great. But did that matter to me as a 15 or 16-year-old boy? No, it grossed me the hell out, because that chick is the same age as my mom. Women in their 40s are not supposed to be sexy. There is an age in your life for being sexy, and that's not it. Are you listening, Madonna? Because I think you probably need this talk more than Gayle King does. If you're old enough to have a goddamn AARP card, stop trying to be a sex object. You're not one. It's just freaking disgusting. Nobody wants to see their grandmother's vulva on Instagram. In fact, nobody wants to see anybody's grandmother's vulva on Instagram. I guarantee you, literally no one. The SI Swimsuit Edition used to be a major cultural institution because it stuck by a simple formula. We take the most beautiful young women in the world, we dress them in the sexiest swimsuits, and we photograph them in the world's most exotic locations. Now it seems to be dedicated to helping senior citizens and transvestites live their truth and feel good about themselves. So best of luck, SI. And again, no idea why those sales numbers are in the tank. Dateline Washington, Thursday, 16 May. Attorneys general in 18 states, led by Tennessee, filed suit against the Biden administration this week, saying the federal government, through the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission and the Justice Department, is illegally imposing its pro-transgender rules upon private companies and their employees, saying the new executive rules seek, quote, to enshrine sweeping gender identity mandates without congressional consent, end quote. A recently issued enforcement document from the EEOC unilaterally declares that Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1965, quote, requires all covered employers and employees to use others' preferred pronouns, to allow transgender individuals to use the shower, locker room, or restroom that corresponds to their gender identity, and to refrain from requiring employees to adhere to the dress code that corresponds to their biological sex. End quote. All of which would probably come as one hell of a shock to the guys who wrote the Civil Rights Act of 1965. I'm guessing they would be pretty taken aback to learn they were enshrining in law that if your male employee declares himself a woman, you have to let him use the ladies' room. Joining Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skermetti in the lawsuit are the Attorneys General of Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Nebraska, Ohio, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, West Virginia, and Virginia. Skermetti said in a statement, quote, "In America, the Constitution gives the power to make laws to the people's elected representatives, not to unaccountable commissioners, and this EEOC guidance is an attack on our constitutional separation of powers." End quote. And of course, he is absolutely correct. But here's the thing. The wokesters know they're probably going to be out of power soon. And they might be out of power for a good long time, ideally forever. So they're going to ram down as much of this crap as they possibly can between now and next January 20th. And they are not going to trouble themselves unduly with any concerns about propriety or constitutionality. And I, for one, can't wait to see the list of pardons that Joe issues on his final day in office. Remember all those sleazy criminals that Bill Clinton pardoned on his last day? I bet this list makes that list look dignified by comparison. And I bet at least half a dozen of the people on the list are named Biden. Dateline Kansas City, Friday, 17 May. After a week in which the biggest contrived firestorm of made-up social controversy was over a Catholic guy saying a bunch of Catholic things at a Catholic school, Kansas City Chiefs place kicker Harrison Butker has received the support of exactly one of his teammates. Just the one, which is really stunning and brave when your teammate and coworker is being targeted for destruction by the woke rage mob, and a grand total of one freaking guy is willing to publicly stand behind him. That is where we are now as a society. But what did Harrison Butker say that was so controversial? Beats the hell out of me. Really, I listened to the entire speech more than once, and as a man with no dog in the religion race, I didn't even hear him say one thing I disagree with. If he had given the same speech 25 years ago, he would have been hailed as the exemplar of an ideal sensitive male feminist. How did I first hear about this story? From seeing headlines from your usual suspect online fake news sludge factories. Headlines that said things like, "Misogynist Chiefs kicker says women's only place is in the kitchen." But did he say that? Did he intimate that? Did he imply anything remotely resembling that? No, of course he didn't. And would it be offensive if he had? No, it wouldn't. He said to the young women in the audience that while some of them will surely accomplish great things in their professional careers, for most of them, the most important and gratifying vocations they will ever have are wife and mother. And if we are really in a place where saying something as self-evidently true as that is cause for a nationwide woke ragegasm, maybe we really are doomed. And moreover, if our friends on the left are so bent on intellectual world domination that they can't even countenance a Catholic guy saying Catholic things to a room full of other Catholics, they should really stop calling themselves tolerant, because they're just about the most goddamn intolerant people that ever lived. You know, I'm old enough to remember when the central premise of feminism was the idea that women should have the same range of life choices that men do. Meaning, at least one would think, that they should still get to retain the option of being wives and mothers and homemakers if that is what they want to do. But it seems like in practice, feminism has only sought to remove that option and force all young women into the college career pipeline, whether they want that or not. And it's not difficult to see why, as a matter of political calculation. Women who live the traditional life of wife, mother, homemaker, they don't have much reason to adopt a socially liberal political worldview. They are much more likely to be churchgoers. They don't get that many abortions, and they don't spend that much money on therapy and birth control. But if you get them onto that university campus and start pumping that sweet leftist rage grievance heroin into their veins, then you have got them on the assembly line to being bitterly unhappy, single, 30-something, borderline alcoholic, urban apartment dwellers with 9 cats who work middle management HR jobs at the local widget factory and can't understand why they aren't gaining happiness and fulfillment from the anonymous sexual encounters they engage in with random dudes from the bar each weekend, who engage in passionate activism on behalf of every current thing that comes down the pike, who take all the most fashionable antidepressants and tranquilizers, but still wind up depressed and non-tranquil. Because that's a woman who will always and forever vote for the Democrats. The stay-at-home mom who sings in the church choir? Not so much. I'm just saying, if you think there was no deliberate attempt at social engineering being undertaken 30 years ago, when the Treasury Department went all in on federal underwriting of student loans, and the Education Department at the same moment adopted national guidelines for high schools that said, everybody goes to college now, high school is 100% college prep, henceforth and forever, then I'm sorry, but you're just far too trusting. And I feel like this was a freakishly long roundup this week. You see what happens when I write the damn thing on Saturday with no time pressure? Anyway, that is the merciful end of the week that was. May it rest in peace. And now I lob a half-court alley-oop pass to the man who slams it home and shatters the living hell out of the backboard and stands there flexing like a total badass as the broken glass crashes around him in slow motion. Your illustrious host, my distinguished colleague, the man who is to large furry hominids what Black George Washington is to America, your friend of mine, the one and only Mr. Caucasian Sasquatch!